Hi, welcome back to Makewell Miss Markwell, or hello if you're new to my channel. Today I'm going to be focused on a sewing tutorial. This is something that I want to focus on, and I feel like I've been neglecting this, and this is something that my fashion and design technology students have asked me to do. So let's do some more sewing videos. So I'm still going to do the food videos, so don't worry. But after making the scrubs for the King's Lynn Hospital, for the NHS, a lot of people have been asking me, why don't you make face masks? And I thought, okay, but this is my own little take on it, and it's a little bit more inspired by glitz and glamour, belly dancing, and it is an exotic veil, and it's like a face mask veil, and I hope you like it. Okay, let's do it, let's get sewing. To get started, I'm going to draft and make a template pattern using A4 paper. Fold the paper in half lengthways. Here are some measurements taken from my own face dimensions. I measured from half my face, from the top of the bridge of my nose to the side of my cheekbone close to my ears. Your measurements may differ. The tip of the pattern is 12 centimeters. The vertical length of the pattern measures 12 centimeters, and it sort of stops on my chin. You can draft and make a shorter one or lengthen it, it's up to you. The length of the template pattern that I'm going to draft measures lengthways 24 centimeters. Now I'm going to half the pattern, and so I'm going to reduce that. Half of 24 is 12 centimeters. So it will be 12 centimeters from the fold to the width. The horizontal line will be 12 centimeters, and the vertical line will also measure 12 centimeters as well. And remember, your measurements may differ as well, according to your face measurements. I am now going to mark out all the measurements. Also remember to include your seam allowance. I'm going to do 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeters, up to you. I'm using a black felt tip just to outline the pattern markings, just for the purpose of the video, so you can clearly see what I'm doing. Remember to include the instructions and indicate the fold lines, top and side, etc. Take your paper scissors and cut out the pattern. Here is an example of my first prototype. The elastic that goes around the ears was too tight and it pinched my ears, so I need to make the elastic wider so it fits more comfortably around the ears. And I'm going to move the elastic wider so it's moved down more onto the mask. The length of my first prototype was way too long. The new pattern is now shorter, as you can see. I have selected this beautiful, colourful sequin fabric. The material glistens in the light and it's perfect for my exotic, glamorous face veil. Here is a top tip. Neaten up the material and flatten it out, removing all the creases. Now don't automatically fold the material in half. I want to reduce waste, and that's why I'm quite careful about the way I fold my fabrics. As you can see, there are still sequins on the edge, and so I could reduce the width a little bit. So I'm going to reduce it and shorten the width. So refold and shorten the width. Perfect, I'm happy with this now. So I'm now going to take the template paper pattern and lay it onto the folded width of the material. For the fold line, you've guessed it, place the folded edge of the pattern, the paper template pattern, and line it up with the folded edge of the material. Secure the pattern of materials by pinning through the layers. This stops the pattern from moving around. Be careful and handle the pattern of material carefully, as you can see. I was a little bit heavy-handed with my sausage fingers, and the pattern has shifted and it is no longer lined up at the edge of the material. If this patterns, then remove the pins and repin and line the pattern up with the edge again. I'm now going to take my dressmaker scissors. Now, a top tip is to never use your fabric scissors to cut out paper, because this will blunt the scissors. And carefully cut out the shape around the pattern. I haven't used pinking shears because the way the fabric's been constructed, it doesn't fray when cut with normal shear scissors. So I'm now going to remove the pins. Here is a little bit of quality control. I'm now going to check the pattern and material cut out to see if it's not very neat or if it's wonky. I'm now going to insert the dressmaker pins to mark out and indicate the top. This is just a good habit to get into, especially when the shape is even or symmetrical. I'm now going to repeat the process of preparing the lining for the mask face veil. And remember to fold the fabric to reduce the waste. And remember, do not fold the fabric actually in half. If it's really wide, just refold it depending on the width of your template pattern. This is to reduce the waste, remember. This is a polyester cotton blend, and the way it's been woven together it does fray. As the fabric tends to fray, I'm going to use pinking shears. These are used for cutting woven cloth. Cloth edges that are unfinished will easily fray, the weave becoming undone and the threads pulling out easily. The sawtooth pattern on the pinking shears does not prevent the fraying, but it does limit the length of frayed thread, minimising damage to the raw edge. Once the two sections for the face mask veil has been cut out, you've got the sequin layer and the lining. I'm going to measure and cut out the elastic. I have measured the lengths of my ears. Now yours may differ, whatever you feel most comfortable for you. Remember ergonomics, ease of use. A good key word there for D&T. So my measurements are 6 inches, about 15 centimetres-ish. As a top tip, you don't want the elastic facing outwards. You want to create a strong stitched edge, so you will need to pin the elastic end overlapping the edge of the side of the lining. See what I mean? I have measured 1 centimetre from the top of the first piece of the elastic to the edge of the lining, and then 5 centimetres from the top of the lining to the bottom end of the elastic. And repeat the process and construct the elastic to the other side as well. The pins that I have inserted into the elastic and the lining are horizontal. This is so when I sew onto the sewing machine it will actually skip over the pin. If the pins were vertical, then when sewing the needle would break and snap. So I think this is a little top tip here, having the pins horizontally. So this is the fun part. I'm going to now layer and pin the front of the mask material, the beautiful sequins. So here's a top tip: place the fabric the sequin side down, so it's facing downwards onto the elastic and the lining, so it's like a sandwich. So you've got the sequin fabric, you've got that's the bread, you've got the elastic which is the cheese, and you've got the lining which is the second slice of bread. Well, that's quite a good analogy, I like that. Another top tip is making sure all your dressmaker pins are facing the same way, so when you actually go to sew, you can actually pull them out as you're going along. Before you sew, make sure the layers are flat, check both sides, you don't want any creases or wonky, bulky bits. Before I start to sew around the edge of the mask shape, I'm going to check the quality of the construction of the layers. The elastic is overhanging, so I know the plain seam of 1.5 centimeters, 5/8 will sew over, trapping and encasing the elastic between the lining and the sequin fabric. I have just pinned 2 horizontal pins, leaving a wide gap. Do not sew all the way around onto this gap, as it is really important to keep an opening to pull the mask through so you can reveal the sequin side of the mask material. I'm now going to sew from the first pin from the gap I have left. As you can see, I'm removing the pins as I'm sewing towards them. This is to stop sewing over them so you don't break the sewing machine needle. Health and safety, place the metal foot down before you sew. Here is a top tip, always have the bulk of the fabric to the left when you are going to sew, so you have the raw edge lined up with the metal foot. I'm going to start at the first pin, sew all the way around to the other pin, and continue to sew forward just for a couple of stitches. And then hold the reverse button down, keeping your foot on the pedal, and reverse back to create an anchor. Stop pressing the reverse button down and then continue to sew forward. Always remembering your 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. For the corner, to keep the stitch even, I'm going to stop sewing. Make sure the needle is down into the fabric. The reason you need the needle down is you're going to turn and pivot the material, and keeping the needle down keeps the stitching nice and even, and so you don't lose a stitch, which then creates a weak gap in the plain seam of the fabric. So once the needle's down, you can continue to sew forward, creating your plain seam as you sew along. This is to avoid the stitch losing its running stitch, and so if it misses a stitch, then that's going to be a weak seam allowance. If when you do stop with the sewing machine and the needle is in the upright position, just use the big dial at the side and pull the needle down. A good quality control tip is to make sure the layers of the material haven't ruffled up and become all bulky, so you need to keep flattening them out as you're sewing as well. Keep teasing the layers and getting those creases out. I've just stopped sewing just to fill the layers so I can fill the parallel elastic that I constructed earlier, and I want to make sure it's horizontal and parallel so they haven't shifted when I'm sewing over them. As you can see, I'm removing the pins as I'm sewing towards them. This is to stop sewing over them so you don't break the sewing machine needle. I have now sewn around the face mask bell layers, and I'm now coming towards the second pin. And I'm going to stop sewing and back stitch. Now remember to leave that gap. It's really important because this is where you're going to pull the fabric through once you've finished sewing. When you've stopped sewing, you need to then cut the threads from the actual mask so it's like detached from the sewing machine threads. And then you're going to also cut the cat's whiskers, keep everything nice and tidy, and cut those loose threads that are hanging off. So this is where you needed that gap, so this is the fun part. I'm going to open and tease the gap and turn the mask the right way out. And you're going to then see the beautiful sequined glistening fabric, and make sure the elastic is all pulled out. And as you can see, the ends of the elastic are hidden within the layers of the plain seam. And as you can see, I'm just stretching out the elastic, and it can withstand tension and pull and force, so that's nice and strong. And remember those horizontal pins that I used to insert the elastic between the layers when I was constructing everything. I'm going to quickly pull out the pins that are securing the elastic. Remember health and safety and quality control, we want to remove all pins. Right, I'm now going to iron the lining side up because the sequin is actually a polyester and it's like derives from oil and coals, so it has a high flammable melting point. So if the iron is too hot, it could melt the sequins onto the iron surface and that could burn and cinch the fabric. If your face mask veil is turned the right way out, you can then see that you've got the hole, the gap that hasn't been sewn up. So I would use a hand sewn stitch, which is called a slip stitch, or you could quickly just sew on the sewing machine. And if I was using the top stitch, that would have been perfect to have actually sewn all the way around, and that would have secured that gap, but never mind. And I'm going to give it a final press on the lining side up to remove the creases and to make sure the seams are nice and strong and there's no bulk as well. I'm now going to pin the gap, the hole. To finish the seam, I would use a top stitch, which you sew quite close to the edge, but the needle kept getting stuck and the threads kept getting stuck and chewed up, so I'm not going to bother with that, but you could do that if your material is not difficult to work with. And as you can see, the top stitch is not working, and this is to reduce the bulk and to have a nice neater edge, but the sewing machine keeps getting stuck, so I'm going to have to stop this and I will use the slip stitch. I might make a video of the slip stitch, invisible stitch for you as well at a later date. So here are the modifications that I have made, and I've also adapted the elastic so it fits more comfortably around my ears as well, because like I said before, it was too much of a point and it actually pinched my ears and it wasn't really comfortable. And now the shortened version actually stops at the point of my chin. Let's see if it works. Easy around the ears. Get closer. Thank you for watching Makewell Miss Markwell. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and it was quite fun doing something new and a bit of a sewing tutorial, and it's a twist on the belly dancing mask, a bit of fun, a bit of glitz and glamour as well, and I hope you liked it. And just thank you so much for all your support over the few years as well, and if you like what you see, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Makewell Miss Markwell. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have, thank you so much. And also leave a comment below if you like any suggestions of videos that you'd like me to do, like recipes, and if you want me to make sewing tutorials. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and bye for now. Now I love both these masks, but when I made the turquoise light bluey one, I thought it was beautiful. But then when I made the black version, and especially the first prototype where it was just so pretty, and I just think, which colour do you prefer? Do you prefer the blue, the turquoise, or the black silvery sequin one? I think they do look reminiscent and inspired by the belly dancing, exotic glitz and glamour. I think it's looking good. I'm quite proud of this. And as you can see, I can even actually remove the face mask from around my giant, enormous earrings. Look, it can be pulled off really easily. Yay! You can see I've shortened the length of the mask, so it used to hang quite low down from my underneath my eyes to my neck. So let me know what you think of this video. Like, do you prefer the turquoise one, or do you prefer the black silver sequin mask? Face mask inspired by belly dancing, glitz and glamour.